Um, we live by three very simple core values, and hopefully you can, if I did my screen right, you can see the core values over my, what would that be? My left shoulder.
Left shoulder, right?
Left shoulder. You know, we're here to give first, not take. We're here to help others before we help ourselves. And we look for ways to make friends, collaborate, and partner, and not just play business card contacts and zero-sum games. So that's a little bit about who we are. I would like to introduce two people that are very special to the chapter. The first is Mr. Doug Holly. Doug is active in the chapter. He's also entrepreneur in residence at the Maryland Innovation Center. And Doug and the Innovation Center and the team there have been with us almost from day one, over 4 years. And I can't tell you how much we appreciate your continued support, Doug. So thank you very much. Mm-hmm. And the second individual I would like to introduce is Mr. Patrick Rockhill. Patrick is part of our Startup Grind management team, and he has been with me or with us again since the very beginning. So welcome, Patrick, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. The next 2 months are going to be incredibly busy. Obviously, we've got today's event. Friday the 19th, we have our monthly Founders Forum event coming up, which is a gathering of fellow founders and entrepreneurs in a very relaxed, unstructured, informal environment to be able to connect and communicate with one another. And we're going to be having our bi-monthly demo day, where anybody who wants to can demo their product or service a little bit and get some feedback from us. The next event is the 24th, which is our second installment of this program called Strategic Planning, that will be put on by Team Business again. And we're thrilled that we're going to be able to have them back. Then on the 22nd through the 25th is our 2021 Virtual Global Conference. And this takes place of the in-person global conference that happens out in San Francisco every year. And this is an opportunity for people who otherwise might not be able to travel and attend an in-person conference to be able to attend a conference and get a feel and flavor for what the global community is all about. And then finally, in March, we are devoting the entire month, all of our programming is going to be about mental health and wellness for entrepreneurs, founders, teams, and startups. And we've got two very, very good speakers lined up, both of whom are mental health professionals. One's a psychiatrist and an MD. The other one is a certified therapist. But the most important thing is that they're both serial entrepreneurs themselves, and they both have their practices are focused on helping entrepreneurs get through their mental health issues, which we all know, even though we don't like to admit, we all got them. And instead of me trying to do something like this at the beginning of the pandemic, when everything was crazy, we are now at a point where this thing is having a very long tail, and we're beginning to see some of the signs of mental health issues coming up. And so we want to do our part within the chapter to help provide some tools, some information, and some guidance for all of us to be able to better help manage our own mental health, which in turn helps everybody else manage their own mental health. There will be more coming out about that this weekend as soon as we get the events posted. And with that, I would like to introduce three people who are near and dear to my heart. Laura Zam, Andre Vanderberg, right? And Nick Denon. They are the founding and managing team for a company called Team Business. And Laura just so happens to be part of our chapter management team as well. So there's a little vested interest. And what we're doing today is I think it's going to be something a little fun. We want this to be a highly interactive discussion. And Laura, I'm going to let you tell about the transition from in-person to the details about transition from in-person to virtual. But this is what we're doing is two things. Number one, we're here to get educated. But number two, we're also here to help serve as a beta test platform for them, to help them work out kinks and bugs and issues that they may be having in this transition from in-person to virtual. So throughout the event and after the event, we're going to be able to give them feedback on what's working, what's not working, so that they can incorporate all that feedback into helping to make their program that much better going forward. That having been said, Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chris. And you're recording, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So hi, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. So just very briefly, Team Business has been running experiential hands-on learning programs for about 20 years now. And very core to our design is learning experientially, not lecturing, not teaching, but letting people learn from their own experiences based on where their starting point is. So all of them are in person. Our clients have for years told us, don't change what you do. Do not digitize, do not virtualize. Make sure that this is a hands-on, interactive, team-based, competitive, fun learning experience. Then COVID hits and we all looked at each other and went blink, 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 and a bunch of swear words came out because all of our revenue disappeared overnight. All of our clients just said that nobody knew what to do. So Andre and I refinanced our house and said, okay, we got to do this thing now. So it thrusted us into innovation. And we've spent the last several months taking what is core and beautiful about our programs and so impactful about our programs and turning them. We're proving a model that this stuff actually does work virtually as well. So we've finished designing Classic 10, which I'll tell you about in a minute. We are about 2 or 3 weeks away from having another program built, which is more extensive in the build in that it includes gamification. So there's actually a game that has to be played. All of our programs being team-based, competitive, fun learning experience involves people physically making a product as part of the learning experience, which obviously we couldn't do virtually. And so now we're just a few weeks away from being able to do that as well. So let me tell you about Classic 10. Classic 10 is a program that's designed at the executive level, and it's designed to give managers and executives a toolkit of helping them to structure their decision-making process. So their decisions are informed and organized, and it helps to set strategy and cascade strategy down into the organization. And so what you're going to experience this week and next week is 2 of the tools that are taught in the whole program. If you go through the whole program, it follows a series of giving the teams a challenge or opportunity, giving them information and some tools, having them learn the tools and practice using the tools, making their decisions by doing a bunch of causality, what if scenario thinking processes. And then they make their decisions, implement their decisions, measure the results, and then continue the cycle. So the whole simulation is being given challenges, learning tools, gathering information, asking critical questions, and then making decisions in a structured way. And so what you're going to experience today is 2 of those. Today's the profit triangle, and then next week will be the value chain. And Nick's going to be our facilitator. Again, Nick has been running these programs in person for 20 years. And Andre and I, he's in South Africa. And Andre and I have been running them in the US for 20 years. And so again, at the end of the program today, we're going to ask you your feedback to what today was like. And then if you have any interest in seeing the full program, we're very happy to figure out how to do that with you. And Andre and Nick, do you guys want to introduce yourselves real quick before we dive into the program?
Sure. Andre, go for it.
You're muted, Andre.
The power of the president. Not only are we married, but Laura is the president and she has power. One of the important lessons in business is understanding what you're good at and what you're not good at. And one of the things that Nick is better at is running Classic 10. So today I defer to Nick in running this program. So over to you, Nick.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well, thanks so much. I suppose, by way of introduction, thanks so much, Laura, for taking the lead for the team. I see I've been spotlighted. That's going to be slightly strange for me to stare at myself on my own screen.
Do you want me to turn it off, Nick?
Yeah, fine for now, because I'll go straight into the session afterwards. So just by way of background, I've worked with these programs of Laura and Andres for 22 odd years now, and run my own business since April 1996. That was the last time I had a boss and a paycheck. Quite happy about not having the boss, not so sure about the paycheck. The struggles of the entrepreneur. Doug, you'll share that pain, I'm sure, with your own experiences and your group's experiences. So I think one of what's important for us as a team is that we don't walk into organizations and businesses like yours or your clients or any of our other clients with the trainer presenter hat on, a set of slides, and we just sort of unroll the experience. We are all business owners ourselves and go through the challenges of sales and marketing and managing cash flows and all the typical challenges that entrepreneurs and business owners face. And I think that's quite important because it really just, I suppose, when we speak from a perspective of experience, number one, and number two, credibility, that we're not just sort of taking the latest trends off the internet and repackaging them as a training program. So that's, I think, important. And I certainly found the one thing that I found in my time at university was almost how not to learn business. And our experiential style sort of turns that very much on its head. And we believe very strongly in experiential learning in both the way we take you through the models today, as well as our overall simulated business experiences that Laura was referring to. Okay. What else? I'm a father of two. I enjoy extreme sports and long distance endurance events. And that's probably, and I like coffee. I really have a strong penchant for coffee in all its shapes and forms. So that's me in a nutshell. Let's get stuck into today's session. And the first question I'd like to ask, by way of an introduction, without going through each person and eating up valuable time for you to learn and ask questions, is what attracted you to this particular topic? So the session we're running today that has been kindly put on by our hosts, what attracted you to the topic or the session? If you don't mind just typing a short answer in the chat box at the bottom of your screen, then I can start to get a bit of a feel for I suppose, your motivation, your learning motivation being here today. So let's see what we've got there in the chat. The profit and so the model of the profit triangle, Patrick, thank you. Thanks very much for that. Let's hope you haven't had any experience with it, and it'll be a nice surprise, Patrick. Thanks, Doug. Better understanding of financial balance. Interesting. Trade-offs, etc. Yeah, we'll certainly have a good mention on that. Keep them coming, team. Thanks, Mel. I am a data-driven strategic financial planner looking to create replicable models for small business success. Nice. Okay, we will definitely package a little what's in it for me there for you, Mel, to be able to take on to other businesses. Who else have we got coming through? Okay, certainly some perspective from Hadley. We're gonna appreciate that. The balance, financial balance for a startup business, very interesting. Making those right decisions, I think I totally agree with you, critical. Okay, and in response and joining, Hadley, and joining your comment with Laura's about thinking through the different profit drivers in your business, I think it'll be fascinating at the end of the session to hear your feedback on that. Rod, yes, all of the above. Love that. If we can learn all of the above, I'm in too. So great perspective. Thanks, team. I appreciate that. So really diverse, interestingly enough, but all around better understanding of finances, the balance of it, the profit triangle itself, Patrick, strategic drivers. Okay, being able to take ideas from this and replicate it with other small businesses. I think that's a fantastic one, Mel, and hopefully from Doug's perspective, that can work with the Maryland Innovation Center too. Okay, I'm going to close that for now. If I just wanted to clarify something from Chris or Laura's perspective is if you remove the spotlight from me and everyone's on speaker view, I tell you why, because I'm just looking to get a bit of a perspective of people's faces as well. Should we see how that works? I would appreciate that. I'm going to
do it for you. Okay. So if you guys want to see Nick bigger, you just need to put him on speaker view. That way he can still see you guys and he doesn't have to look at himself while he teaches for the next 2 hours, facilitates for the next 2 hours.
We can.
Did that work, Nick?
That's perfect. It's far better. I enjoy the getting the regal feeling of Patrick's moustache, which is just awesome there. And Rod, we might have to break and discuss some stories behind that really cool collection you've got behind you there. But it just keeps it real, and yeah, works better for me. Maybe if you guys give us feedback as we go through it when we put the models up. If you would prefer to be spotlighted, then we can do that too. So let's get started. We have just on hour and a half, let's say, because we'd like to keep some time for Q&A and a bit of feedback. So there's tons to do, and I think in keeping with Chris's really good introduction and sort of opening. The idea is to do exactly what the values of the chapter are, all around giving first, and that's what we're here to do. And hopefully you'll get some blood, sweat, and tears from me and the team, and hopefully some very useful information. Be helping others part, making friends, but at the same time taking some valuable information away that helps us with the way we think about our businesses. And those of you involved with other organizations, small or large, being able to immediately add value. And if we all are honest with ourselves, and you can use your finger to point if you would like, who is the most important person in the world? Let's go.
My wife.
Jerry, your wife, maybe in terms of not avoiding trouble, I would agree. But would we agree that to ourselves, we are the most important person in the world? And so therefore, Doug, by default, those close to us definitely fall into that category. The point of me asking that question is ultimately to answer the age-old question, what's in it for me? You've given us 2 hours of your time to be here. What are you going to get out of it? And how are you going to get a return on your time investment? The way we see it is that in cascading strategy into a business, the primary objective of the purpose of that strategy was to grow a particular metric, grow shareholder value, grow market share, grow profitability, while at the same time keeping customers delighted, adding value to your customers and keeping them coming back, giving them the best prices we can, the best service. And then typically there is a people or planet motive that very often is part of a company's overall strategy. So if we're going after driving growth, driving profitability, while driving value and cost effectiveness for our customers and keeping our people happy, our job is to bring you that. And so what we've put together over the next 2 weeks is the first focus today, and Patrick's request was exactly spot on, is we are going to share a tool with you and apply it to a case study on how to drive profitability. Next week, we're going to say, okay, team, we learned how to drive profitability. Now, how do we embed that into an organization's value chain? And we will be taking Frederick Taylor's original systems model and its version of the value chain, not Michael Porter's, and essentially systematizing the strategy that you've come up with. So let's pause there for a second. What is the purpose of a strategy? Let's go. Rod, what do you think? Why do we have a strategy?
Strategy is your plan of action.
Love it. Okay.
It's how you're going to do it, why you're going to do it.
Fantastic. Excellent. What else? Hadley, what do you think? Jerry, what do you think? Why do we have a strategy?
I think it's to achieve your goals. What's going to get you there, how you're going to get there.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's to focus the goal so that you're not going off in 1,000 different directions.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. Love that. Thank you, Doug. Jerry, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that, I see strategy supporting your tactics, integrating those two together.
Fantastic. Putting the two together. So essentially combining the strategy and the tactics. Excellent. Okay. So if we summarize all of those into a very manageable idea, would you agree, depending on where we are going, depending on what we are focusing our efforts on, that the strategy you've chosen prioritizes, according to those criteria, your money, your budget, what you have available to spend, the time the organization or the individuals have, and where they allocate that time, tactics, focus, etc., and the businesses' resources. It prioritizes the focus of those three. So we will spend our money, spend our time, and spend our resources or allocate them according to what is going to give us the best shot at whatever we've decided to go for, and we build our tactics around that. So if we know that we're going after that, and we use data, insights, technology, people, etc., as enablers of our strategy, as part of our tactics that Jerry mentioned, our job as entrepreneurs, our job as strategists, is to find those opportunities, those unmet customer needs in our particular market segment, and then align all of those resources, money, and time to go after and meet those unmet needs of our customers and commercialize them for the customer's gain and for the organization's gain. And that's what we try and do as strategists and as entrepreneurs. And so what we're going to be looking at today is just a tool on enabling us to do that and enabling people we work with to do that as well. And part of answering this question is this discussion around prioritizing and trade-offs. Because something that we see a lot in our clients is that we know what to prioritize and what to focus on in our tactics, but few people, few managers, few executives ask the question, okay, now that I know where I'm going and how I'm going to get there and the markets I'm going to be serving, what must I deprioritize? Very few people do that. What must I now deprioritize? What trade-offs must I make so that I can keep my focus where it needs to be? Instead of chasing too many rabbits, we focus. So I think that would just be something I'd like to land early in our session. What do I now need to deprioritize? Okay, fabulous. So let's look at how we do that. And we're going to focus on our tool for the day, the profit triangle. I'm going to remove this rather large whiteboard from the screen and get stuck straight into our tool, fulfill Patrick's obligation or need for the session. And then let's crunch some numbers. So the profit triangle, and please, if I'm not on speaker view, please pin me. We'll be focusing on the model behind me for the next little while, and it's going to get really nice and busy and full of numbers as we apply the ideas to the case study we're going to be going through. So the profit triangle model, being one of the 10 that Lara spoke about in our classic 10 simulation. As you can see, it has a number 2 over there. It's the second one we introduce in the journey after Blake's decision-making cycle, seeks to help senior and executive managers, and we use it in our other programs too, but let's just keep our focus there, to sift through the many strategic options that they have available and use it as one of the tools to prioritize the money, budgets, the time, and the resources. You'll notice that there are obviously 3 corners of the triangle, which implies there are going to be 3 drivers or 3 levers to a company's profitability. We're going to go through those first and just set the stage for how the tool works. I'm going to present a scenario to you. I'm going to get some feedback strategically from you, what you would do. And once we've done that, I'm going to replace the sheet with our working sheet, and we're going to get stuck into some numbers. I'm going to ask you to take your calculators out and really, really apply the ideas of how we pull these 3 levers of the profit triangle. So the profit triangle argues that, as mentioned, there are 3 levers to profitability. The first one is the margin that we make on each product or each service that we provide. Typically, our margin on an individual product is calculated by taking the selling price of that product in the market and subtracting the cost price from that. That leaves us obviously with our margin, what we put in our top pocket. That margin is then multiplied by the volumes sold. How many of those widgets do we end up selling in a given period of time? Do we get to go to Hawaii on holiday with our gross profit at this stage? Unfortunately not. We still have a whole pile of expenses that we have incurred, or operating expenses, overheads, OPEX, any of that terminology that's probably familiar to most of you. So in order to understand how profit is generated, we take the margin, we multiply it by the volumes, we subtract the operating expenses incurred, and we are left over with our profit at the end of the day. Now, as with all models, that's not exactly rocket science. So let's start by applying the 3 levers and the subcomponents of them to a scenario or a case study that might help take it to a slightly deeper level. Joe is an orange hawker. He has a small stand at a market and he buys his oranges. Should we use the dollar? These are really expensive. These are really expensive luxury organic oranges. So the translation.
You're not going to use Cougarans? You're in.
We could use Krugerrands, but those would be obscenely expensive at an ounce of gold. That would be a very expensive Krugerrand. So let's use dollars for our fancy organic oranges that Joe is going to be selling. He buys his oranges from the supplier at $1 and he sells them in the market at $3. His margin is then obviously $2. So we know Joe's margin per orange is 2. Let's say on a typical day, Joe sells 100 oranges in a day. That's good for him. So his gross profit or gross margin is 2 multiplied by 100, giving him $200. However, he's got some expenses, and let's say he has $10 for the rental of the space in the market, 10 for his taxi to the market and back. Let's say he has packaging costs of $10 for those oranges, and let's say he pays a security business, let's say, as part of his overall operating insurance for personal or asset theft, and that cost him another 10. So based on the numbers that you can see on the chart, what is Joe's daily operating profit? Shout out if you want to.
At 160.
160, Doug? Does anybody violently disagree with Doug's mathematical equation? Jerry, you happy with that? Bethany, you good? Yeah? Awesome. Okay, so superb work done. Thank you very much. Joe's profit is 160. Now, the challenge that Joe has is that he has just expanded his family by another child and now has 4 children. And so trying to operate on $160 a day is becoming a little bit more challenging for Joe. So he has asked the Startup Grind Consulting Network of entrepreneurs to advise him on his profitability. And so what I'd like you to do, and we can shout out in the beginning, and I will write them all up on the left-hand side of my page, is what are all the strategies that Joe could implement in his business to increase his profitability. Once I've got them all from you, we will then shift our gear and actually take those 9 strategies and develop business models around them and start to look at some fundamentals of strategic decision making. Mel, you had your royal queen wave there ready for the first strategy.
Reduce expenses.
Absolutely. So strategy 1, Joe can reduce his expenses. Don't worry about my messy handwriting. I will have this replaced with a very neat chart. Just want to get them out. So he's going to, if he drops an expense, that will then increase his profit. Fantastic. Next strategy.
I would also look at other competitors and see if there's any change that he could make in the retail price at all.
Okay, so what you're saying, if I had to distill that, Hanley, is increase the selling price. Would that be correct?
Sure.
So let's put a big arrow over here to increase the selling price. So strategy 2 is that Joe increases his selling price. Now, let's pause there for a minute and come back to our flip chart page of trade-offs and prioritization. If Joe increased his selling price, why would he want to do that in context of the lever to increase the margin? But what is the trade-off, Hadley? What might be a trade-off consequence of increasing the selling price?
Well, you could have less volume sold.
Bingo. So we'll examine that a little bit later, but let's get all the causality down first and come back to the numbers. Great. Strategy 2. Strategy 3. Who wants to volunteer it?
With part of the money that was saved by reducing expenses, such as you pick a category X and you say, I'm going to reduce this. Go back up a minute and reduce it by half. Take that extra half that you just saved by only reducing by half, put it into promotion so as to increase volume.
Fantastic. So Patrick's suggestion is that we essentially increase whatever form of promotion, advertising, marketing, any form of promotion. Let's loosely refer to it as advertising or promotion. Fantastic. Now, why, Patrick, would Joe want to do that? you did mention it. I just want to reiterate it.
Well, it seems that Joe felt he had some kind of falling statistic in his life with the need for more money coming in. And if your statistics are beginning to fall in an area, you have to figure out, what can I do to promote, in respect of that area, something to bring about a return to a growing graph.
True.
In the case of sitting at a volume of 100 for an extended period of time, that's not growing.
Indeed. So distilled down to its essentials, you would say to increase volume. Would that be correct?
Yes. Increase volume.
Increase volume. Fantastic. Now, might there be a negative trade-off of advertising or promoting?
Well, if it's bad promotion, you wasted your money.
Possibly, but in the first place, we need to incur a money expense. Would you agree with that, Patrick? Would that make sense? I saw Mel was nodding her head.
Mhm.
So the downside...
Perhaps you would increase the money expense, but if you could take it from the viewpoint of, I'm at my cart and I'm hawking these oranges, what can I do different there without spending any money? First, find out what you can do with that.
Absolutely. We will isolate each of the 9 strategies by themselves so that we handle them one by one and keep a clear critical thought line going through each of them. And then we will definitely start to integrate them like you've just mentioned. So the trade-off consequence is essentially an increase in his overheads. As I said, don't worry about the messiness. I will get a really nice clean sheet out now. That will be a negative trade-off. And Patrick did say, well, we need to assess. I will come back to those assessments and decisions now. Number 4, what else could Joe do?
Get a lower cost for the oranges.
Fantastic, Doug. So he decreases the cost price. Would we agree with that? Everybody happy with that? Joe gets a decrease of his cost price. Naturally, that would increase his margin. Fantastic. That's what we're trying to do as one of the 3 big levers. What might be, and Doug, I'll come back to you on this, what might be a negative trade-off of buying a cheaper or less expensive raw material input into his business? If he went out and bought the cheapest oranges he could find, what might be a trade-off? We don't know, but what might a consequence of that be?
You could lose volume if the quality drops, right?
Spot on. So we need to watch out for a reduction in quality. That is very often the trade-off, and certainly something we see in our manufacturing businesses or manufacturing clients where there isn't good working relationships and communication between the purchasing department, the production team, and the end sales and customer base. Production is going for cheaper products. Procurement is going for cheaper products. It's their key performance indicator. It's their drivers. But very often the quality suffers, and so the production process and the end throughput that comes through the line is then challenged. Now, while we're on this, and Doug, I'll stay with you, typically, how does a business get a cheaper raw material input price or drop the cost price of its goods?
Go out for competitive bids, right? Look at other suppliers.
Definitely. What might a second big strategy typically be to get lower cost price?
You might make a commitment to the supplier for like increased quantity. So there's some win-win arrangement. They get to sell more, but at a little lower price. So you find some way that you can mutually gain.
Fantastic. I'm going to put both of those down. So our first one that Doug mentioned was we change supplier or threaten to move to a different supplier. And the second one, essentially, we buy bulk. We go for volume in that process. Superb. That's number 4. Let's go. Number 5. Who's got another idea? Bethany, what's creeping in the back of your brain there? Jerry, I see you eyeing the triangle out very deeply. What do you think Joe should do?
Well, I come from a real marketing background, and even though oranges are oranges, I think he needs to take a look at his competitive advantage. Is there something that he's doing differently than his competition? Thinking strategically.
Okay, so I'm going to push you to the next level of your thought. While you sit there thinking strategically about Joe's business, what do you think he could do differently?
How he kind of it kind of goes back to what Pat was saying. Maybe it's linked to how he's marketing, sending out his message, and how he's distinguished himself from his competition.
Yeah.
Like oranges are oranges, but my oranges are my oranges, and they are different. And so it takes time to develop that competitive thinking process.
Indeed, it definitely does. In terms of major sort of strategic drivers, we've got the promotion, advertising, and hopefully finding some competitive advantage against his competitors. Let's build on that. Mel, have you got something to build on that?
Diversify.
Diversify, okay. So that we can link that idea of Jerry's and add it to Mel's. We could diversify. So he could start selling apples instead of just oranges and appeal to a different market segment and maybe sell a combination of both. Fabulous. We will come back and unpack each of these strategies with numbers, but let's get them up in the meantime. So we're 5 down, 4 to go. What else could Joe do strategically?
Buy out all his competitors.
The challenge, Doug, is his asset base based on his low level of profitability doesn't warrant that level of cash to buy them out, but that would be a great idea if he could. Let's focus on the variables we've got here on the chart. Have we explored everything around the margin? We've mentioned dropping cost price. We've mentioned increasing selling price. What else could Joe do that would influence the margin? Not necessarily positively, just influence the margin. What does Black Friday seek to achieve? A discount. Happy with that? Hadley, I see you nodding. You happy that Joe could decrease his selling price? Typically, a strategy used by most salespeople in most markets is to decrease selling price. Now, that would have an opposite effect of decreasing his margin. So why would Joe voluntarily want to bleed his margin? What's the trade-off he's going for?
Increase volume.
To disproportionately increase his volume. And obviously that is your Walmart type model. We pile them high and sell them at the cheapest price we can, rack them and stack them, and money is made by a smaller margin but disproportionately larger volumes. Fabulous. Number 7. What else could Joe do? He's standing there by himself in his store. What else could he do? He's got these oranges. Sweet, juicy oranges. Mel, go for it.
He could become a small manufacturer, make something in addition to selling the oranges, make something out of oranges or pertaining to oranges.
Fabulous. And your suggestion?
Bowls for oranges. I don't know. Candied oranges. Orange chocolate.
Orange juice.
Chocolate. Let's keep it really nice and simple and just say he makes orange juice. Are we okay with that? And essentially what is he doing as a strategic initiative is he is adding value. So he is taking a commodity of lower value, adding value in his processes to produce something that has higher value that might appeal to a different market segment. Largely the essence of our value chain conversation next week. Fabulous. Number 8, we've got 2 more.
He could adjust his hours and exposure to the marketplace in such a way that he might find on different days, different locations for his cart. If he's only working Monday through Friday now, he might look at where can he be on a Saturday or other weekend day to find more buyers.
Okay, so Patrick, strategically, what are we saying? We're saying we need to incur an expense of extra labor in order to drive more volumes. Would you agree with that?
Yes, extra labor, extra hours, but then at that time, he might also want to look into finding out what it might take to hire somebody to man the cart if he can prove the profitability of it. And this is not unlike the discount. If you're going to try a discount,
You seem to have slipped back into mute mode.
yeah, if he's going to try this, just like on the discount, he needs to do a little bit of build, measure, learn on his discount experiment, just like he'd have to do a little experimentation here.
Superb. So let me put that into a single strategy. Would you be comfortable if I wrote expand there? So he either expands his hours or he expands his stall and pays his son to work in a different market, and he expands his business. Essentially, he gets another outlet. He opens up a different outlet, and all businesses would have that as a strategy. Great one. Thank you, Patrick. And the last one is essentially a volume growth strategy. So I'm just going to put it there next to its corner of the triangle. And why that exists as a strategy by itself is that it doesn't have any trade-offs. What I mean by that is that if we expand, that's going to incur an expense of labor, as Patrick said, and you would have to see whether it's profitable. If he adds more value, as Mel said, he might need to buy a juicer or a candier of the juice. Whereas if we increase volume through service-driven initiatives, CRM processes, better informed salespeople that can better articulate the value proposition of the business, great service, good follow-up, all of those kinds of zero-cost strategies grow volume without influencing the other levers of the triangle. Does that make sense? And that's why we've isolated it, because advertising will grow volume. Dropping selling price will grow volume. But volume will also grow just by good relationships with our customers, better understanding their needs, managing them through a CRM process, consistently meeting their needs. That doesn't cost the business anything, but it definitely is a strategic driver of profitability. Mel.
What's your premise behind saying that it doesn't cost the business anything to do that?
Excellent question. In terms of nothing costs nothing, you're spot on that. In terms of a major trade-off consequence planning and decision-making, as I think about the answer to your question, if we're going to buy a CRM process, it's going to cost us money. If we're going to train our sales staff, the training would cost them some money. We try to keep it a zero cost strategy to encourage the thinking, especially next week when we look through our value chain, is what could we do differently that adds value to our customers that doesn't necessarily carry an expense, if that makes sense. So following up with a customer and phoning them on their birthday is not an expense incurred strategy, but it would boost our relationship with them. Does that make some sense? But I definitely am open to your point that It's not always cost-free or zero cost in terms of our expenses, but in terms of major strategic initiatives, we have found that to try and grow volumes through just good old-fashioned, great service, good involvement, understanding customers' needs, doesn't necessarily carry a major overhead expense to an organization.
Well, this is a strategy we're trying to come up with, and we have to think of the scope. And so the scope is a cart, and the cart has our principal character manning the cart.
Great.
So within that scope, if he's got downtime when the foot traffic isn't so good near the cart, that's when he now applies that unused time or poorly used time to some of the basics that you're now describing. And this is really back to just plain promotion without paying any money out for advertising until you figure out what among your personal selling promotional activities that you're doing begin to work to bring volume up. And then we're on a gradient of moving up to our strategic plan of improving and increasing the volume with what we have in our current resources.
Fantastic. Perhaps doing it better with what we have. And I like your differentiation there, Patrick, between good service to increase volume and promotion. So for example, let's take it back to our lead character as Patrick described. If Joe is smiling at customers and asking them if they would like to come and inquiring about their day and commenting on their dog, and wow, that's a cute kid, would you like an orange young lady? That is not necessarily an a billboard advertisement or a something that would require him to pay for space on a flyer for the market or something that was a marketing or advertising strategy. Okay.
No, but it could get it some good public relations publicity, which would be a growth factor.
Indeed. Okay. So I'm going to move on from there. The purpose was just to get them down. And what we're starting to see, and Patrick, you're absolutely spot on there, is how they do in the real world start to overlap and integrate. The purpose of separating them is it enables individuals, not necessarily yourselves, but our managers that are on our programs, that if you're going to take some of this into your team, enables you to unpack each one of them quite specifically so people can handle them in bite-sized chunks. Okay, fantastic. So thank you for your feedback. Now let's take our calculators out and roll up our sleeves. You'll see mine are half rolled up already. And let's turn these 9 strategies into some numbers and really get deep into the business thinking side, the number crunching side of these strategies, so that forever we've got them as tools, both in our own businesses as well as in our clients, to drive profitability. Okay, I'm going to put up the next page. So here we have them. There they are. Increasing selling price, increase margin, will decrease volume, and so on. Our profit triangle itself with our 3 levers: selling price, cost price, making margin, volumes, and expenses, and our original numbers we had for Joe's oranges. And so to kick off your thinking, I want to start with Doug's suggestion of cost price. And I want to create a scenario and ask you a question. So this is the scenario. Joe takes Doug's advice, goes to the supplier and says, Mr. Supplier, my consultants have told me that if I buy volume from you, you will give me a better price. The supplier says, sure, Joe, they are spot on. I will make you a deal. If you buy 120 oranges, I will give them to you at 80 cents. Okay? If you buy 120, I will give them to you at 80 cents. So let's look at our numbers and how they're starting to change. Naturally, Joe wants to pocket the margin, so he continues to sell at 3, but we know that his cost price now is 80 cents, leaving him with a new margin of not $2, but $2.20. Fantastic. Now, based on your business experience, if Joe leaves his selling price at $3, is it going to have any impact on the volumes that he sells? I'm seeing Joe shake his head. Rod, would you agree with, sorry, Doug shaking, Joe shaking Doug shaking his head. Rod, would you agree with Doug that if he leaves his selling price at 3, his volume will stay at 100? What's your opinion?
It depends, but not likely.
Okay, so it's not likely to make any impact. And we know that from retail, if there's no incentive for the customers to buy extra, the rate of sale or the volume sold will stay the same. So Monday morning, Joe goes down to his supplier, buys 120 oranges, sells his normal 100 during the day at a selling price of $3. And now he's stuck with these 20 oranges that he can't sell. He has to buy 120 again tomorrow. And so he takes the oranges and he gives them away to a charity. In fact, for the purpose of illustration, let's make the scenario even more bizarre. He throws them away in a big construction bin outside the market. All 20 of them, he throws them in the bin, goes home, sleeps, wakes up on Tuesday, buys 120, sells 100, takes the 20 he can't sell, and throws them again into the construction bin. Goes home, sleeps, wakes up on Wednesday, and repeats the same pattern over and over again.
Tell Joe to stop.
Sorry, Patrick?
Tell Joe to stop doing that.
Okay, so my question then to you, and I'd like you to put the answer in the chat group at the bottom, is based on his extra 20 cents that he's getting. He's forced to buy 120. He throws 20 away. Is that a good business decision for Joe or a bad business decision? You can put good or bad, G or B, but put an answer into the chat at the bottom. Good or bad business decision? Bad, says Rod. He's throwing them away. Bad, says Bethany. Patrick also definitely agrees. He is a bad decision. I want your opinions. I want your opinions. Keep them coming. Agree with Mel there, Hadley? Bad. Doug, what do you think? Are you mulling through the maths in your head there? Okay, Doug's really coming in from left field and just completely taking a minority view on the situation. Any more opinions there that you want to pull through? Okay, so certainly by consensus, most of you agree this is a bad business decision. Now I'm going to, purely because you're in the middle of my screen, Mel and Hadley, why? Why is it a bad business decision?
Missed opportunity. I mean,
okay, missed opportunity. Let me ask you a question maybe slightly differently. How do you know it's a bad business decision?
Well, I think just waste in general. And, you know, when you're starting a business, if you would just maybe increase a little expense, maybe to buy a blender or a juicer to make that and buy the cups, down the road, I think it will be profitable.
Okay, what I'm going to force all of us to do is focus just on the strategy that we are isolating at the time. Okay, team? Because blending them is not what we're doing right now. We're going through one by one so we can land the causal relationship between the decision, its consequences, and its trade-offs. At a later stage, we can then start merging them. And I'm going to maybe then ask Patrick based on that. Why do you, or let me rephrase the question. How do you know, Patrick, that it is a bad business decision?
So the decision we're talking about was the decision to throw away the extra oranges, right?
So the whole decision, buy 120, sell 100, throw 20 away. How do we know that's a bad business decision for Joe?
Well, isolated is not a bad decision. I agree with Doug, an isolated view.
How
But
do you know?
It's how do I know it's good? Because
Yeah.
he changed something about his business model in order to accommodate the extra child.
So how do we know that that's good? Because he could change it and it turns out bad.
Oh,
How do we know it's good?
so
We know it's good or bad over time as his statistics prove it out.
No.
What statistics, Patrick? What statistics? What's that metric that I'm pushing for here?
Profit.
Bingo. So I've been rather belligerent in this question of how do we know, how do we know, how do we know? Because so many people make business decisions on gut feeling or instinct, or it seems logical. And very often, not always, but very often, they are wrong. And for so many entrepreneurs or managers, they make it on gut feeling, and we only develop gut feeling from experience. And so if your experience has not been very long or large or detailed, your gut feeling might not be the right one. And there might be other factors. So how do we know? We do the math. That's it. It is as simple as that. The only way we know is we do the math. So I'm going to stop there for a second and I'm going to do the math with you. Would you agree that the game of football or soccer, do you call it soccer in this in the States, or football with a round ball?
Soccer.
Soccer. Yeah, because football's, the one with the American. Yeah. Okay, so soccer. Would you agree that the objective or the rules of soccer are very simple? The team that wins puts the round ball in the back of the net more times than the opponents.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Glad we're all in agreement to that. It's not complicated. There are not different points for different types of scoring. It's simple. Business is as simple as soccer. It is very simply a game of money in versus money out. That's it. If money in wins, you make a profit and you stay alive. If money out is greater and wins, you make a loss, and in time the business closes. It's that simple. Now, obviously, getting there is as complicated as World Cup soccer, but in essence, that's what we're after. So let's use that same methodology or thinking and apply it to this scenario. Let's look at in and let's look at out. How much extra money came in from this decision?
$4.
In. I'm not going to go overall. I'm taking in, then I'm taking out. Then we'll look at the difference between the two. How much came in? 100 units multiplied by the extra margin of 20 cents gave us $20. Happy with that?
But we didn't sell 100 or 120.
No, yes, I didn't say 120, I said 100. So his normal sales of 100, he now has an extra 20 cents on each orange. Everybody comfortable with that? So 20 cents times 100 gives us $20. Would we all agree with that? So in terms of Joe's gross profit, of comparing the sales to the cost, he is up $20. But there is money out as well. There is this waste that he has incurred, these 20 oranges, which he has to throw away or chooses to. So 20 oranges, what is the cost price of each orange?
80 times.
80 cents. So what is 20 oranges multiplied by 80 cents? What does that give us in dollars?
16.
$16. So we have $20 in, $16 out. As a number of you have alluded to, Joe is $4 richer. His profit has gone from 160 to 164. Was that a good business decision?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On the surface, yeah, but not really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No buts. We'll come to the buts now. Why do I say that? Because 20 is more than 16 in every single one of the 267 countries on the planet. Therefore, that is a good business decision. You cannot argue or skin the cat any other way because the pure math says he is $4 richer. Now, some of you are still thinking in your head, man, but this is still a crazy decision. He could do the juice, he could do all sorts of other things. And you are absolutely correct. But what I have found so often in my clients is that the primary decision gets confused by the secondary decisions. The primary decision of, is this deal a good deal? Is this decision a good decision? Is this contract a good contract? Is confused by the terms, the change process, the redundancy of certain assets or machinery that the business has, the inconvenience factor, the emotional factor, who we buy from, the time issues, etc., etc., etc. And they cloud the primary decision. And so on strategy 1, first learning point, do the math. Second learning point, separate the primary decision from all the emotional secondary decisions. That does not mean it's going to change your mind, does not mean you're going to do it. It just means it helps to isolate and focus your decision-making time and process. Okay, so there might be a fine, for example, of $10 for throwing the oranges away, and so he's net down. I don't know. But the idea is you do the math. So let's continue our journey in doing the math, and let's go back to strategy 1. Strategy 1 was to increase the selling price. Why? So that it increases Joe's margin. What might the trade-off consequence be? The volume goes down. So let's put a few numbers to that particular strategy. And let's say that Joe increases his selling price to $3.50. When we change strategies, all the original variables stay as they are. Otherwise, this is going to get exceptionally messy by the time we hit number 9. So his cost price was $1, and so that left him with a $2.50 margin. You were quite correct. His volumes dropped from 100 to 85. So my question to you on your calculators is, very quickly, can you determine for me, is this a good cost decision for Joe? It made him more money. Or is it a bad cost decision for Joe? It cost him money. Take out your calculators and put your decision in the chat box. And please remember, Nick, I don't have a clue is a perfectly good answer in this forum. You can put IDK, I don't know, in the chat if you are happy to do that. Good decision or bad decision? Very keen to see your answers. Based on the math, good. I like that. Mel, that tells me your gut feeling is telling you, wow, I don't know about losing 15% of my customer base. But that tells you it's a good decision. Okay, we've got
Don't follow the math.
Absolutely. Hadley's also saying good. Anybody in the IDK department where you sitting there thinking, I don't have a clue how to work this out? Any takers? Any takers? Going once, going twice? Me, Bethany, fantastic. Okay, I always love company. They say that misery loves company. So let's go back and again look at the numbers. That's all we've got to do. So let me ask you another question. Does this decision, and I'll stay with Bethany, does this decision influence Joe's operating costs of his business? I'm seeing a general head shaking from side to side. No, it's got nothing to do with his operating costs. So let's focus our attention over here. Okay. And to make this simple, Bethany, we've got to decide, is Joe going to bring in more money with the strategy or without the strategy? Therefore, a good or bad cost decision. And what do we know was his previous gross profit or gross margin? It was a margin of 2 multiplied by a volume of 100, leaving him with 200 in his top pocket before he paid his expenses. So anything that makes him more than 200 as a gross profit or gross margin is a good decision. So let's look at our numbers. Take out your calculator, Bethany, and literally just type in the variables of the triangle. What was his margin? $2.50, so 2.5. Hit the multiply by sign over there and put 85 in the next entry. Hit the equal sign, and what does it give you? 212.50. So is 212.50 more than 200? Absolutely it is. He's $12.50 up, 6.25% increase in his GP. Fabulous. Good cost decision. Superb. That's how we do it. Now, I want to ask you another question. What's Joe's sales number for that day? Give me his revenue, his revenue number. Revenue number. I was just getting my terminology right. You refer to income as profit level. So revenue. What was Joe's revenue for that particular day? 85 was his volume. 350 was his selling price. So simply type in 350 times 85. What do you get as his revenue? Anybody want to pop it in the chat or call it out?
297.5.
297.50. Excellent. Bethany, you got it as well. Spot on. This is easy stuff, man. This is really easy. Now, here's the challenge. He comes back to his sales manager and he says, Madam Sales Manager, I achieved 297.50 and I lost 15% of my customer base. What do you think is going to be the next conversation that Joe has with Mrs. Smith, his sales manager? He's going to be in a load of trouble. And herein lies the challenge with multiple members of an organization, from sales to procurement, not understanding the math and not having a good level of business acumen, is these kinds of decisions are made and consequences issued, I suppose, like this, when in fact he should be hailed as a hero. He has grown the organization's gross profit or gross profit percentage by 6.25%. Make sense? Great stuff. Let's move on. Let's go to number 2. Joe takes your advice and he drops his selling price. So I'm going to write it up. Here he goes from the original $3 to $2.50. Minus the $1 it cost him for his orange, leaves him with a margin of $1.50. What did you say would likely happen? Yes, the margin went down. We can see that. But you said the volume would go up exponentially. And you were spot on correct. Joe's volume goes to 130 130, his volume skyrockets to. Instinctively, good or bad cost decision? Instinctively, what's your gut feeling telling you? Be brave, be brave. Good or bad? 130, his volume skyrockets, 30% increase in his orange volumes. What's your gut feeling telling you?
Probably a little bit better.
Probably a little bit better. That's what we're thinking. Yeah. Some of you are going, I am not putting a decision here. I'm going to do the math because I'm not being caught again. So fantastic. Let's go and follow your own advice and let's go do the math. So what do we do again? Following the discussion we had with Bethany earlier, all you're doing is you're multiplying just use the formula of the triangle. What was the margin? 150 multiplied by the volume, which we know is 135. So pop that into your calculator. And what is your answer?
It's a bad decision.
A very bad decision.
What's our number?
155.
155
55.
once you've taken the expenses off, or at the gross profit level?
Take the expenses off.
Okay, so at an overall profit level, he went from 160 to 155. So if we add our expenses back, would we agree he at a gross profit level, he's sitting at 195?
Yeah.
Fabulous. Now, what was break even? 200. Agreed?
Mhm.
And he's sitting at 195. So therefore, we know 195 is worse than 200. That was a bad cost decision for Joe. Now, just to mix it up again, multiply the numbers out again and tell me what was Joe's revenue for the day. So that is selling price multiplied by volume. See there, Hadley's put in 325. Anybody want to?
Yeah, 325.
A couple of nods, great stuff. 325. So again, Joe's coming in and ringing the bell in the office. He's got the deal, 30% up. Woo woo, hitting his commission targets. This is just fantastic. Meanwhile, the organization is hemorrhaging profitability because Joe's discounted his selling price in order to get the extra volume. Production are going, yeah, volume, 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 because they can get their economies of scale and their max production runs. And as most FMCG businesses are, everything's about volume. No, it's not. It's about profit. Okay. Volume is irrelevant if it does not bring us increased profitability. As you can see in this situation, his volume's up 30%, but his profit is down. Now, team, I'm obviously taking generic scenarios. If you've got redundant stock or situations like, inventory, redundant inventory, or inventory that's about to expire, those are obviously extenuating circumstances. We're just keeping it mainstream. So that's good. Some nice numbers there. And that's the second one. Again, do the numbers. Just to, by way of a show of thumb, up, sideways, down, let's use Julius Caesar's sort of strategy. How comfortable are you with the concept of break-even or a break-even analysis? Would it be worth 3 minutes to unpack it with a visual for you?
Can't hurt.
Okay. Yeah, can't hurt. Love that answer. Thank you very much. Okay. So this is how I've got it to make sense to my small brain. There is a hole in the ground. All the sand is outside the hole in a pile. And let's say there are 50 kilograms. We metric? I keep forgetting pounds, kilograms. Pounds.
We use pounds, but you can use kilograms.
Yeah, we understand.
Pounds are fine for me. So there's 50 pounds of sand in this pile next to the hole. I have a spade, and every spade load I take and I throw back into the hole is 2 pounds worth of sand. My question to you is, if I have a 50-pound pile of sand and each spade load is 2 pounds of sand, how many spade loads will it take for me to get the pile of sand back into the hole?
5.
Rod's going 25, Bethany's going 25, but she's looking at me like, Nick, this is too simple. Where's the catch here? Don't you love it when you get a complicated concept and it's no longer complicated, because it really is easy. I once had energy equals mass times the square of the speed of light, Einstein's theory of relativity, explained to me in a sort of for dummies type book, and it's relatively simple once you know how. I'm not going to try and explain it to you. It was a long time ago. So you are spot on. Ron, Bethany, you are spot on. 25. How did you geniuses figure that out? You took the sand, 50, you divided it by the spade, 2, to get the number of spades, 25. Would you agree with that? That was how you did it in your head. Okay. So if we apply that perfectly brilliant analysis of a break-even calculation, and we apply it to the profit triangle that you can see behind you here, would we agree that typically, not always, I will reverse it if we've got time, typically we're trying to break even on an expense decision or an asset acquisition. Would we agree with that? Typically, we bought this new machine, or let's go back to Patrick's scenario, which I will get to in advertising. We've spent money on an advert. We have incurred the cost of a machine. We are paying for a gondola end stand to put Procter & Gamble's washing powder on. We've hired a new salesperson. What is our break even on that expense? So the expense, I'm going to write in, what color is your easiest to see? Blue? Does blue stand out?
Yeah, blue's good.
The expense you are trying to get rid of or break even is the sand. The spade you are using to contribute towards breaking even on that expense is your spade. Therefore, your volume number, your volume is the number of spades. So let's take that FMCG model. You are offered $1,000 to pay for a gondola end stand to put your products on, your washing powder, in a Walmart. And let's say, for example, you sell a washing powder for $10 and it costs you $5 to manufacture. Therefore, your margin is $5. Everybody okay with that? 10 minus 5 is 5. My question to you is, how many boxes of washing powder do we have to sell in order to break even on the expense of $1,000? Our sand is 1,000.
200.
Our margin is 5. Therefore, 1,000 divided by 5 equals 200. Spot on. And it is no more complicated than that. And Bethany, that look on your face when you got the answer right was, it can't be more complicated. It isn't. Conceptually, it isn't. Whether we're hiring a CEO, buying a gondola end, or advertising, that process stays exactly the same. Whether we're buying bulk, whether we are going cable, Netflix, whatever the decision is always the same. What do I have to get rid of? What is the marginal contribution to that? Therefore, the one divided by the other gives me the volume I need to achieve. So let's go back to, we've done our cost price. Our volume, as we mentioned, was really just around CRM and greater demand sometimes in the marketplace. So we could stimulate demand, which might enable us to stimulate volume in some way, maybe even increase our selling price. But let's move to our advertising or promotion, Patrick's original suggestion. And I am going to add to Joe's 40, 20 for a little plastic juicing machine. So my question to you, based on the fact that all the other variables are staying the same, selling price of 3, cost of 1, margin of 2, my question to you is, what does Joe's volume need to increase by to break even on the, sorry, we're talking about advertising. My apologies. I was talking about the juicer. Let me go back again. I've mixed the strategies. Joe puts up a sign outside the market saying, buy Joe's oranges now, sweet as honey, worth your money. And that costs him $20. And he, in order to keep it there each day, he has to pay his $20. So my question to you is, how much does his volume have to go up by per day to break even on the expense of the advert? Put your answer in the chat or call it out. Or remember, IDK is a perfectly good answer. And great question, Andre. The variables all go back to the original one. So 3 is the selling price, minus 1 for the orange is 2 as a margin. Bethany is on song today. Don't put the question mark, back yourself. You got 2 answers in, come on. Are the rest IDKs? Any other takers? Going once, going twice. You don't have to follow the rest. Okay, so Hadley supports the 10 plan there. How do we know that? You took 20 as the extra expense, you divided it by the margin of 2, 20 divided by 2 equals 10. That's it. It's no more complicated than that. So therefore, Joe's new average sales volume has to be 110. If his statistic, coming back to Patrick's suggestion earlier, following the statistics, is not consistently over 110, bad decision, stop doing it. Great stuff. Everybody okay with that one? Excellent. Okay. Let's go to the adding value, and I'm going to ask you the same question again, but let's say this time it is 30 for Joe to take some of the excess oranges and juice them into a juice. Okay, just purely on what he would use. Let's say, for example, he used 4 oranges per glass of juice. 4 oranges per glass of juice, which would make his cost price 4. And let's say he sold his glass of juice for $9. Let's keep our math simple. 9 minus 4 equals a margin of 5. So how many glasses of orange juice does Joe need to sell to break even on the cost of the 30 for the squeezer?
And we took the sign down outside.
I beg your pardon, Patrick?
So we took down that sign that he was paying $20 for.
Let's leave the sign there because hopefully it's working for Joe. And now he's attracting more customers and offering juice as a value add. How many would he need to sell in a day to break even? We said 9 was what he sold it for. It took him 4 oranges to make it. So 9 minus 4 leaves him with a margin of 5. His cost is 30. Sand divided by spade. 30 divided by 5 gives us
6.
6, fantastic. I think we've got a couple of 6s coming through in there. Spot on, spot on. The girls are fast with their typing today. So 6. So strategically, we know whether we are the manager of Joe, the manager of Joe's business, whether we are Joe, that if he's not selling more than 6 glasses of juice a day, there's something flawed with the strategy that we need to tweak. Either we need to stop it, or we need to do something to our selling price, buy cheap oranges, or a combination of the strategies. Let's look at our diversify. We said earlier that Joe could diversify. So I'm going to add a green triangle. Joe's apple, green Granny Smith apple, to the picture. And let's make the maths easy and say Joe makes a margin of 3 per apple and he sells 20 apples, giving him an extra 60. The question I want to ask you, looking at the picture and the way I've drawn this onto the side of the profit triangle, is what is Joe's operating cost or expenses or overheads incurred in operating the apple triangle? I'll ask the question again. What are the expenses incurred in operating the apple triangle?
I'm going to assume no different than it was before.
Let me. It's a safe assumption. The structural costs of running his business have not changed. So the
40,000
taxi, the market, all that stuff stays the same. I'm making specific reference to the operating costs needed to operate or fund the apple triangle. Mel, you got a question there?
Would it be 40? I mean, if that were all he were selling.
Oh, let's again get some clarity. No, he's still selling his oranges. He's still selling his juice. He's just diversified into apples as well as oranges as well as juice.
Are you asking if there's incremental cost?
In a way. So are there any expenses? Are there any extra incremental costs outside of the cost of the apples that Joe needs to incur to run his apple business? Does he need another table? Does he need another taxi? Does he need another security company, etc.? No, he doesn't. And so his operating expenses in diversifying are 0. Would everybody agree with that?
Money-wise, yes.
I beg your pardon, Patrick?
Regarding money, yes, that's it. You're on the right track. Regarding things outside of money, there may be an incremental cost.
There might be, and maybe we could argue that the packets, depending on the kinds of volumes he buys, he might have a small incremental cost for the packets. But the principal idea I want to land with you, and we've got probably 7 or so odd minutes before we break for Q&A and feedback, goes along the lines of this saying: diversification leverages profit. Diversification leverages profit. We get disproportionately higher profit from diversification than we do from the cooperation. Why? Because your gross profit goes straight down to your net profit or your earnings before interest and tax line, because there's no extra or marginal extra expenditure incurred in running that diversified business. So if you have a deli by day that turns into a bar or nightclub by night, your rent is the same, your levies are the same. You might have incremental extra expenses for your labor and for cleaning and maybe for electricity. Coca-Cola buys Bon Aqua, a water business. No new trucks, no new drivers, no new warehouses, no new fridges. All of that fixed cost structure for Coca-Cola stays the same. The only cost they've got is the variable cost of each bottle of water, and maybe, as Patrick said, some small incremental extra. But that's where diversification really can work for businesses, as long as it doesn't take your focus off your core business or cannibalize it in some way. Okay, hope that made some sense. And let's go to our last strategy, our expansion. And Patrick hit the nail on the head by saying, if he's going to expand and create another orange store, he might have a labor cost. Let's say he pays his son $60 to man the store for the day. He would have his normal 40 expenses, margin of 2, volume of 100. 2 times 100 is 200, minus the 100 of expenses, increases his profitability by 100. Naturally, the trade-off might be, as we've said here, the increase in overheads, and depending on the locality of that store to his store, there might be cannibalization. We see that a lot with your McDonald's and KFC and fuel stations, depending on where they're located, where they cannibalize each other's businesses. Okay, so that then brings us through to the end of our 9 strategies. To summarize, and then let's go into a Q&A and then a little bit of feedback. To summarize, we had 3 main levers. Pull them in some way, and we're aiming to increase profit. We chunked those down into 9 different strategies. 3 linked to the margin, increased selling price, decreased selling price, and decreased cost price. Volume, we had advertising, which increases volume, or any form of promotion, do better relations with your customers, etc., to increase volume. And in terms of our expenses, we looked at dropping those expenses or doing a good cost, bad cost, break-even analysis on any expense, as long as it brought us in more profit. We also added a couple of other ones of diversify into different products, expand our business, and add value. Add value, as I said, will be a cornerstone idea of next week's value chain model. What else were some of the biggies that came out of our journey? Don't make decisions on gut feeling or any emotion for that matter. Do the math. How do we do the math? We simply take the SAND discussion and we compare the old number to the consequence of the new number. If it is more, we have made more profit, good decision, more in, less out. If it is less, a bad cost decision, nope, we don't want to do that. And we said that our break-even was very simply down to the sand divided by the spade equals the number of spades. Please don't forget that, because it's the only way I've got to make sense in my brain. And you can get a bit twisty with that in terms of opportunity cost lost, break even on opportunity costs, and other trade-offs. We could expand that model and get quite fancy with that, but let's just stick with our fundamentals. And the other one is that ultimately it is profit which decides whether a strategy works or not increased sales, not increased volume. Profit. Naturally, and this is not necessarily the forum, but we need that profit to actually end up in cash, because we can show profit on our P&L and not necessarily have the cash trickle into our bank account. So we need to look at that as well. And naturally, as Patrick has alluded to a couple of times, and Doug as well, we want to be looking at how we incorporate these strategies. And that's when we really start applying this decision-making, is where we integrate, where we use the extra 20 oranges and the discount to make juice, etc., and combine them nicely. Bring in a discount to absorb those extra 20, and we keep going. So I hope that added a significant amount of value, which is exactly that cornerstone strategy in the bottom right-hand corner of my screen. Just having a look at at those values of yours there, Chris. We need to help others, make friends, give first, and add a lot of value. I hope that this has added value to you. I hope you have a better feeling for these decisions and the 9 strategies that for the rest of your life you can employ to increase profitability in any business you find yourself in. Thanks a million. Open to you, questions, concerns, issues, anything you want to fire at me.
Thank you, Nick. That was awesome. So now, thanks a lot, guys, for taking your time. Now, give us the good, bad, and the ugly. What did you guys think? Does this kind of model work? Did you find it to be a valuable tool? Anything at all, any reaction? Facilitation style, because Nick's used to facilitating in South Africa, not the US. So is there anything culturally that happened in your experience today?
I mean, I don't think from a cultural perspective, it mattered. It actually, I think, soccer versus football makes it for a little bit of an interesting conversation piece. I think it actually adds to the charm of the interaction. I'll tell you, so as we were starting into it, I'm thinking, man, this is so simple and basic. And then you teased out 9 different strategies, and you teased out the fact that from a gut feel, we can really easily screw up. I was thinking, man, this is actually pretty effective. So my personal reaction, and I've been in, I'm on the older end of the scale. I've been in business for a long time and dealt with a lot of stuff. I was pleasantly surprised how effective this was at helping reframe the wrong context we sometimes have in our brains.
Fabulous. And if I could just ask you for a minute to take your mind to what could that look like for a team or yourself when there are another 9? So whether it's your classic 4 Ps of marketing, or Levitt's life cycle, or Porter's 5 forces model, market segmentation theory, et cetera, the same today was just about showing you part of the methodology, right, and obviously being able to take your head out a bit in terms of seeing how we do business acumen education a little bit differently to the rest of the marketplace.
So just to clarify, in the Classic 10 program itself, you'll learn 9 other tools like this,
right,
that actually link to one another. So you'll not only learn the profit triangle, but you'll learn how does it actually impact and connect to the supply and demand tool, for example.
So, and I don't want to be the one only talking, but I would say that, well, if you've done the other 9 as well as this, I would be very pleased. Now, the one danger to this is you got the fundamental concept here, but everything's nuanced in life, right? And just to the thing that drove our gut feeling of throwing the 20 oranges out, made us feel wasteful and so on. Like one of the things that I've seen in business, where a business can incrementally add something else to their business without changing their OpEx, so they think they can make more money. But what they don't see is that sometimes that can cause a major distraction. Now, selling granny apples and oranges is not a big deal. But if all of a sudden they decide that they're going to sell Rolex wristwatches at the same time, yeah, the stand doesn't cost any more and that kind of stuff, but now the supply chain becomes more complex. It's out of their norm. And so there's those dangers that this doesn't address, nor is it necessarily meant to be addressed, but I could see where you got to somehow at least point that out to people, I think.
True. Fabulous.
Rod, any feedback for us from your perspective? And
I really like parts of this, and I still have issues with other parts of it. I really like Nick's style. I don't think there's any real cultural issues at all. It was in one way nice and refresher to kind of, go over things. I was never a numbers person, and I always live by the adage, let the number of people do the numbering and explain it to you. So this was a good refresher for me. I think the problem that I have, and it sounded like maybe a couple of other people did, was the example of throwing the 20 oranges away. And I don't know if that's a cultural thing, the way that I was raised. I totally get the point that Nick's making, but there's something built in me that throwing 20, there's more to the story. People are going to find out, eventually discover that you're throwing 20 oranges away, and that could eat. I don't see how that would benefit you. People are either it's going to hurt your reputation, or the people that are buying it are not going to care so much to do some dumpster diving. And you're going to lose sales there. And I get that this was, a very. I get what your approach is, and I like it, but there were just a couple of things in there that I'm like, yeah, but kind of things.
And Rod, I really appreciate that. I think that I've felt that reaction a lot too, Nick, the whole throwing it. I know the point you're trying to make of splitting people's decision making. So maybe it's figuring out another story that still lets them see you're making decision A and then you make decision B, right, Rod? So it's splitting up the decision cycle. So you're not mixing up the two decisions at the same time, but the throwing it away part, kind of everyone reacted badly to that.
I mean, what you first said was to give it away to a charity. Fine, I just leave it at that. And you could even talk about how that would be an advantage to you, because then you get positive press versus negative.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. We do to chat through that. Sorry, yes, Chris. Sorry.
No. At first I was a little skeptical about using the analogy of throwing things away. But in terms of a broader strategic thinking perspective, which is really where we're going with all of this, okay? It's one thing to be able to run hard numbers. And sure, if you got to throw 20 away and that's already sunk cost, it's not going to cost you anymore. But to Rod's point, there's a whole series of subsequent strategic decisions that are embedded in the decision of, do we throw it away? Do we donate it? Do we do something else? Because I can see a whole different set of decisions coming out of just that one little element, which then begins to complicate the strategic decision-making process and could then lead back to having to redo the profit triangle if you come up with a strategy where, well, maybe instead of getting rid of the 20, we turn around and do your juice thing. Take the 20, make juice out of it. So the point I want to make here is that those kinds of conversations then lead into additional strategic and sub-strategic and tactical issues that have to be addressed.
Precisely. And that's why we create an extreme example, because if you were to donate them, the loss of 4 suddenly is not an issue because I'm doing good. And so it confuses the strategy.
Exactly.
So I thought one. Let me see if it works for you. They self-destruct at the end of the day.
No, I tell you what, I have been in, when you did the thing and you pointed out that, hey, we're going to just throw them away and it's still a better deal. Because I've been in so many situations where senior managers, much higher than me, made dumb decisions based on bad emotion. That extremeness is what made the point for me, which was why I think, wow, this is really cool. Now, I see everybody else's point, but and then you did change it. But I think the point is that, yeah, even if you're just going to waste them from a profit, and with the business is designed to make a profit, that's a good decision. Now, it's not socially a good decision, and you will obviously do something different, but you definitely want people to think of the numbers as the numbers first, and then take those other things into account.
And
Because
maybe
if you
just
start with the
iterate-
emotion,
Yeah.
you will make bad decisions.
And I think just iterating that a little bit more, Nick, just because of the reaction everyone's had to it. Other reactions to this or applications that you can see as a tool to help teams think through the decisions that they're making at their companies?
I just have really simple feedback. The paper behind you, the words are a little too small to read, and there wasn't enough white space for your notes. So some of the times I wasn't confident in giving my answer. It was because I'm looking at your paper trying to remember which numbers I was doing the math with, because sometimes you went up and sometimes you went down, and like there wasn't enough white space for you to be consistent as you were going along. So then I was like, am I doing the right thing or not? Like, because I'm trying to take notes on my own paper. So a little bit more space behind you would probably be helpful.
Thank you.
That's a good point.
Yeah, maybe we separate the strategies from. Okay, I'm just playing with sort of size here to see if the size makes if I was even closer to it, but then I would be really big. But thank you. That's great feedback, and we'll certainly look into that. Appreciate that. Thank you, Ethan.
Yeah, the colors don't come through as clear, differentiate. The black and the blue kind of are similar.
Okay, anything else? Any other feedback from anyone?
Yeah, I'll chime in. Yeah, I really liked the presentation. It's funny about the oranges thing, since I'm the ones that talked about it. At first I was like, oh no, waste. But I think as entrepreneurs, we sometimes get really excited about the creativity about a business and forget a lot about the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I studied economics in university, so I haven't done math in a long time, but as a business person, that's something that I need to focus on a lot more. So like sometimes, you might just throw more money at things without doing the math, because as entrepreneurs, we just get so excited to do more, to do more, to do more.
Especially in your business, Hadley, because it's such a creative business, right? It'd be easy to get sucked into the creativity and not back it up with the math. That's why I wanted you here today.
Yeah, I have like 5 businesses. So, I'm like very excited entrepreneur, but I think that was really good, because I could have gone on. And then when you said focus on the numbers, I just literally there's so much math on all the paper in front of me right now. And I love math. So, I mean, that was good. That was good. But I was like, oh no, waste is not okay. But it's good. It made a good point that I need to focus on the math for the presentation.
Laura, if you could, I didn't mean to jump on your, on your statement, Heather. Laura, if you could put your email contact information in the chat so that people may have ideas later this afternoon, that this way they can communicate with us after this event.
Great.
And, we are at 1:02. And I don't want to take up anybody else's time. Nick, thank you so very much. It was, in my opinion, it was an incredible experience. Laura, thank you. Andre, thank you very much. I'm hoping everybody saw the value in it. I do want to make sure you do understand they're going to be making another presentation next Wednesday at the same time on another component of their Classic 10 strategic planning paradigm. And if you haven't signed up, please go out to our website, our chapter website, and sign up. And You'll also be getting newsletters or a follow-up survey and a newsletter coming out that will have direct links to the event next week. We'd love to see you there. And if you got value out of it, please tell your friends to come and join us, because the more interaction that we can get, the more everybody's going to learn. So with that, anybody have any last final thoughts?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, guys, everybody have a great afternoon. And for those of you in the Mid-Atlantic, let's have fun tomorrow with the snow and the ice.
It's 35 centigrade for me.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Chris. Appreciate the
Bye.
opportunity.